Troilus and Cressida, Shakespeare's most cynical masterpiece. Imagine going to see a Shakespeare play expecting romance, heroism, noble warriors, and glorious speeches, only to discover that everyone is vain, lustful, hypocritical, or ridiculous. Welcome to Troilus and Cressida. Written around 1602, somewhere between Hamlet and Othello, this is Shakespeare at his most unsettling. It is a play so strange that even its first publishers couldn't decide what it was. The 1609 quarto called it a comedy. Modern editors often classify it as a tragedy. Others place it among Shakespeare's so-called problem plays. Frankly, the problem is that it refuses to behave. The story comes from the Trojan War, that vast mythological conflict supposedly fought around the 12th century BC. Shakespeare borrows characters from Homer and medieval romance traditions. We meet Achilles, Ajax, Hector, Agamemnon, Ulysses, and of course the young Trojan prince Troilus and his beloved Cressida. If that sounds like the ingredients for an epic, Shakespeare has other plans. The plot is deceptively simple. Troilus is hopelessly in love with Cressida. Through the efforts of the gloriously sleazy Pandarus, yes, the word Panda comes from this character, the lovers finally get together. Then everything falls apart. Cressida is exchanged to the Greek camp as part of a prisoner swap. Troilus swears eternal devotion. Cressida swears eternal devotion. Within remarkably little time, she is flirting with the Greek warrior Diomedes. Meanwhile, the supposedly great heroes of the Trojan War spend much of the play squabbling, boasting, sulking, posturing, and avoiding actual achievement. Achilles, the greatest warrior in Greece, refuses to fight because his feelings have been hurt. Ajax is a muscle-bound celebrity with the intellectual depth of a decorative cabbage. Agamemnon struggles to maintain authority. The Trojan leaders endlessly debate whether keeping Helen is worth the destruction of their city. In other words, Shakespeare takes the greatest heroes of classical mythology and treats them like participants in an especially toxic office meeting. The most famous speech belongs to Ulysses. In a brilliant meditation on order and hierarchy, he argues that society depends upon degree, a structured chain of authority. Remove that structure, he says, and chaos follows. It's a magnificent speech. There's just one problem. The play itself demonstrates that the people occupying those positions of authority are often fools. This contradiction sits at the heart of Troilus and Cressida. Shakespeare seems fascinated by ideals, honor, love, glory, reputation, but equally fascinated by how quickly those ideals collapse when confronted with actual human beings. The result is one of the most modern plays Shakespeare ever wrote. Think about it. In many of Shakespeare's histories, great men shape the world. In Troilus and Cressida, great men are largely performing versions of greatness. Everything feels theatrical, constructed, and suspiciously hollow. Even the love story is stripped of romantic glamour. Troilus speaks the language of idealized devotion. He sounds like a knight from medieval romance. But Shakespeare quietly undermines him. Troilus is sincere, certainly, yet he is also in love with an idea of Cressida rather than with the complicated person herself. As for Cressida, generations of readers condemned her as faithless. Modern productions tend to be more sympathetic. She is a young woman handed around by powerful men in a brutal wartime society. Her choices are constrained from the beginning. The play asks uncomfortable questions about loyalty when survival itself is at stake. And then there is Thersites. If Shakespeare ever created a patron saint of internet commenters, it might be Thersites. He wanders through the play insulting everyone. Kings, generals, heroes, nobody escapes. He functions almost like the voice of corrosive skepticism, puncturing every illusion the other characters try to maintain. The remarkable thing is that he's often right. For centuries, Troilus and Cressida puzzled audiences. It lacks the emotional catharsis of the great tragedies and the joyous resolution of the comedies. The Victorians didn't quite know what to do with it. The 20th century, however, embraced it. After 2 world wars, Shakespeare's vision of heroic rhetoric masking violence and incompetence suddenly seemed less eccentric and more prophetic. Notable productions have repeatedly highlighted its modern qualities. Directors have staged it as political satire, military farce, and bleak anti-war drama. The Royal Shakespeare Company has returned to it numerous times, each generation discovering fresh reasons to feel uncomfortably seen. Perhaps that's why the play matters today. Most stories about war celebrate heroes. Most stories about romance celebrate love. Troilus and Cressida distrusts both celebrations. Instead, Shakespeare examines the machinery beneath them: vanity, desire, reputation, self-deception, ambition. It's funny. It's bitter. It's intellectually dazzling. And unlike many Shakespeare plays, it offers almost no comforting conclusions. The heroes aren't heroic enough. The lovers aren't faithful enough. The ideals aren't strong enough. The Trojan War continues. The bodies pile up. Pandarus delivers one of the strangest endings Shakespeare ever wrote, essentially leaving the audience with a parting gift of disease and disillusionment. Cheerful stuff. Yet that refusal to console is exactly what makes Troilus and Cressida so fascinating. 400 years later, it still feels startlingly contemporary, a play about image, performance, political dysfunction, and the gap between what people claim to be and what they actually are. In other words, a play about humanity. Which may explain why Shakespeare's most cynical work remains one of his most truthful.